Breaking news coming out today, October 30th, 2025, as we are hearing that Russia has warned the United States about that nuclear weapons testing that we heard was just announced last night. I shared it with you live as soon as it had come out. Now let's go ahead and take a look at the articles so that way you can see it for yourself. Russia is on guard after Trump's call to resume nuclear weapons testing. You can see this updated just 45 minutes ago from the time of this recording. Russia says that it didn't test nuclear weapons, but it said it would if the United States did. So now that Donald Trump has said they're going to be doing nuclear weapons testing, well, Russia is saying they're going to go ahead and do the exact same. Now, this comes as well as Trump's test threat. It could fuel nuclear tensions with China, as well as in that post, he mentioned China and Russia. And take a look at this, how the U.S. nuclear weapons compare to China and Russia, as Trump orders new tests of nuclear weapons and U.S. ally prepares to host nuclear power submarines as well. We are hearing all around the nation right now, there is a lot of talk about nuclear weapons, nuclear concerns, and this all sparking a lot of it happening overnight. As take a look, I shared this with you as soon as it had come out. Donald Trump on Truth Social last night at 8 o'clock Central Standard Time. The United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. This was accomplished including a complete update and renovation of the existing weapons during my first term in office. Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it, but had no choice. Russia is second, and China is a distant third, but will be even within 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter, President Donald J. Trump. So there you have it, you guys. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are you concerned about the nuclear rhetoric that is currently being spread all around the world? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But let's go ahead and get into the articles, the video footage. I'm going to share with you the latest so that way you can see it for yourself, what exactly has been going on roughly over the last 12 hours, 24 to 12 hours, as things have escalated significantly. Now, before we dive into the video footage and the articles, do me a favor, take a quick second if you haven't done so yet and you appreciate the breaking news updates. Hit that thumbs up like button for me. Just helps spread this out across the YouTube platform while we're live. Helps out the channel a ton. Thank you so much. And also, to stay up to date, it is totally free. Why not? Go ahead and hit that subscribe button, and I will keep you up to speed on everything. But with that being said, let's go ahead and dive into some video footage so that way you can see the latest coming out on this for yourself.
All right, earlier tonight on Truth Social, President Trump announced that he has ordered the Department of War to start once again testing nuclear weapons and wants that process to begin immediately. He said the new testing program is in response to other nations testing their weapons. Here with a lot more on that as we await the start of this historic sit-down between the president and President Xi of China. We have Senator Tom Cotton of Arkansas with us. Senator, good to have you. I can go back. I'll read the entire statement because I think it's deep and I think it's profound and I think it's important. And I think it really is a moment that we better pay very close attention to. And as blunt as the president was, he was blunt here. The U.S. has more nuclear weapons than any other country. This was accomplished, including a complete update and renovation of existing weapons during my first term in office. Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it, but had no choice. Russia is second. China is a distant third, but will be even within 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I've instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process begins immediately. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Your take on that?
Well, Sean, I think President Trump is once again reflecting sentiment that President Reagan had in the 1980s. They both regretted the necessity of nuclear weapons. They dreamed of a world in which we might not have nuclear weapons. But as long as adversaries like communist Russia and back in the day and today Russia and communist China have nuclear weapons and they're rapidly expanding their arsenal and they're testing their weapons, the United States can't afford to unilaterally disarm. That we have to make sure that our nuclear arsenal is second to none, that it won't be overmatched by the combined forces of Russia and China, that our aging weapons are still usable, and that our new weapons are designed and made properly. So I agree with what President Trump has announced. It's only sensible that in a world when Russia and China are threatening the United States with a rapidly growing and novel nuclear arsenal, that we have to take steps to defend our way of life, because that's what our nuclear arsenal does. It truly defends our way of life.
It really does, by every measure. I will tell you this, if you look at your screen, it looks like the motorcade, President Trump has already arrived moments ago. It looks like the motorcade, I have to assume of President Xi, is pulling up now as we speak. And this historic meeting, it is, I can see a Chinese flag on the front of that car. And again, on the agenda, the importation of American agriculture, specifically soybeans, TikTok, rare earths, tariffs, the importation by China of Russian oil, and I'm sure issues involving, Taiwan and other issues around the world, fentanyl. A lot of heavy things on the table. I did talk to the president briefly. He seemed optimistic, but he lives for these moments. He loves to sit. He loves to talk. He loves to negotiate.
Yeah, Sean, what you heard from the president earlier today is what I've heard from him in the last week or two as well. He has our farmers close to his heart, our rice farmers and soybean farmers in Arkansas, for instance. He's very worried about our manufacturers who've had lost so many jobs over the last few decades to China. He's worried that China has developed genuine leverage over the United States in some critical points, like rare earth elements that are so vital to modern manufacturing. China has done this by waging economic war against our farmers and our manufacturers and our high-tech industry for decades. For too long, we turned the other cheek and didn't pay attention to it. We acquiesced to it. Thankfully, President Trump is not doing that. He's standing up to China. You and I, and frankly, no one can know exactly what will be accomplished this morning because, as they say, nothing is settled until everything is settled. But fortunately, President Trump is going in clear-eyed and hard-nosed.
I was like, Russell, I'm so rich. He's like, you are? I was like, yes. I was like, you're rich.
It looks like that's Monica Crowley greeting President Xi, if I'm not mistaken. I'm only seeing the back of his head, but I'm assuming that is him and his delegation out of the motorcade now entering the building where President Trump is awaiting, who had just arrived a little bit earlier. It's very interesting in the lead up to all of this. There's been a lot of posturing, a lot of back and forth. One of the issues that really stands out to me, rare earths are way more important than I think most people know. You would know because of your position in Congress and in the Senate. And that is, it is imperative, for example, magnets for auto manufacturing. It is imperative for our military development and equipment. But leading up to this meeting, the president did make a huge rare earth deal with 3 countries. He made it with Australia, Japan, and now South Korea. That gave him leverage. I believe all of these maneuvers, put him in a much better negotiating position, no? I mean, of course, the development here domestically.
Yeah, no doubt, Sean. And it was great news today that the president and President Lee of South Korea reached a big trade deal. That's going to be great for American farmers and ranchers, our manufacturers, our defense industry. And as you said, it is going to give the president more leverage if we have more avenues to import rare earth elements and their finished components from countries like Australia and Japan and South Korea, which is, say, friendly allied nations. Again, it's unfortunate that for too many decades, America ignored China's growing leverage in some of these places. President Trump is committed to eliminating that leverage, to making sure that we have supply chains for vital products that are not dependent upon China. So today's news about another trade deal in South Korea is a great gust of wind in our sails as President Trump sits down with Xi. And again, I know that we can't say exactly what's going to happen. Nothing is settled until everything is settled. But I know that he's going in very clear-eyed and hard-nosed in defense of America's interests.
We've had real concerns about the algorithms and the makeup of TikTok. That's going to be a big issue as well. It looks like that deal is kind of, at least on paper, laid out, where I assume that China will pay us a certain amount of money for that. And I assume that we will control the algorithms as it relates to it working within the U.S. Would you assume that as well?
Yeah, Sean, that's what the law calls for. Congress passed a law last year with overwhelming majorities. It wasn't a law to ban TikTok. It was a law to try to force TikTok to break its ties to communist China. And you put your finger on the critical question, control of the algorithm. Will control of the TikTok algorithm be in the hands of its new American owners and engineers, or will it remain in the hands of communist China? The parent company, ByteDance. If it's in the hands of Americans, then it's really just another social media app like Facebook or Instagram or X or what have you. But if it remains in the hands of ByteDance, which is ultimately answerable to the communist Chinese regime in Beijing, then that means it remains a potential tool for communist Chinese propaganda and for data theft here in America.
Yeah. What do you think as we look at, all these discussions that are going to be going on? Do you believe that President Xi will be trustworthy in any deal that he makes?
Well, I think, as Ronald Reagan said, President Trump would probably agree on this point, too. You have to trust but verify when you sit down with a communist leader like Xi Jinping. They have a lot of leverage over the United States, unfortunately. We've worked to reverse that leverage in the first Trump term and now this year as well. But we have even more leverage over them. They need access to our massive consumer market. They want more access to many of the products that we make that they can't make. So I think President Trump has a lot of leverage going in. I think it's important that we maintain that leverage through any implementation of a trade deal, whether it's struck today or in the weeks ahead or in the months ahead, to, again, make sure that we trust but verify.
It was also important, I thought it was a big announcement by the Chinese that they will reduce their import of Russian oil, which is the lifeblood of their economy, which has been fueling their war machine. I thought that was a big concession leading up to today. Senator Cotton, we appreciate your time. Hey.
I do want to welcome you back into Live Now. I'm Austin Westfall. We have some breaking news that we want to hit really quickly because we are seeing a new post from President Trump. This just came out moments ago. He says the United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. This was accomplished, including a complete update and renovation of existing weapons during my first term in office. Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it, but had no choice. Russia is second. China is a distant third, but will be even within 5 years, he says, because of other countries' testing programs. The president says he's instructing the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately. He says, thank you for your attention to this matter. We have somebody standing by here, Hal Kempfer, who's done a range of events. I know you yourself have been a part of many events, specifically in Southern California, talking about nuclear weapons. Hal, when you see this news, what's the significance of the U.S. picking up its nuclear testing once more?
Well, Austin, this is a huge shift in U.S. policy. We haven't tested a nuclear weapon in the United States since 1992. You may recall in the early 60s, all above-ground testing worldwide was stopped because those massive nuclear explosions, which are encapsulated in video and film, I should say, that we see in movies and certainly newsreels and stuff. Well, it was pushing out a ton of radioactive material into the atmosphere and causing major health effects. So by international treaty, that was stopped, but there was still underground testing. Now, all the other major nations have stopped doing it. Russia doesn't do it. The U.S. doesn't do it. However, North Korea has been doing it, and North Korea has been threatening off and on to resume their nuclear testing, which is also underground. This would be a major change. My question that immediately comes to mind is, where are they planning on doing it? The previous tests were all done in Nevada. It's an area that's not too far from Las Vegas, but that area has been basically shuttered as far as being an active nuclear testing area, obviously for over 3 decades. And I don't know if we'd want to do nuclear testing there. There's issues that we're discovering with the water table and other environmental impacts. So it's an interesting policy, but it brings up not just a question of why and what it'll mean, but how and what will the impact or consequences of those tests incur.
This evening, a couple of moments ago, actually, on Truth Social, where he is talking up U.S. nuclear weapons in a new social media post. He said that because of other countries' nuclear testing, that he has, quote, instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. My source tonight is the former Deputy Director of National Intelligence, Beth Sanner. And Beth, I'm so glad that you're here because I want to just read this entire post from the president from a few moments ago, because I think there's a few things in it that aren't true. And I'm very curious for your thoughts on this, because he said at 9:04 p.m., as he's on the way in South Korea to go meet with Xi Jinping, that the United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. He says this was accomplished, including a complete update and renovation of existing weapons during my first term in office. Because of the tremendous destructive power, I hated to do it, but had no choice. Russia is second and China is a distant third, but will be even within 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I've instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. And he says that process will begin immediately. First off, Beth, is what the president says in this post true? And secondly, what do you make of this announcement?
This video was created by AI. With AI, you can create any visual you could imagine, even visuals of your...
Well, you know, who has more warheads, nuclear weapons, Russia or the United States? Technically, Russia has a little bit more, but it also depends on how you count and what is an active warhead. And, you know, it gets kind of complicated. And I think that basically the United States and Russia are at parity. You know, if you can destroy the Earth, you know, many, many times over, it really, you know, we're talking about angels dancing on the head of a pin. And China being a distant third is true. But my big picture here on the nuclear testing is this is something that you know, real hawks like Ambassador Bolton really pushed for in the first administration, and the president didn't do that. And I personally believe that it is a bad idea to go forward with U.S. nuclear testing, and here's why. Sure that there are constraints on us, and you know, there are people you can argue, you can have discussions about this. There are constraints by us not testing. But when the United States tests, you basically give carte blanche to everyone else. And the reason that we don't test is because we've tested more than pretty much everyone else. We did thousands, over 1,000 at least, tests during the Cold War. And we have computer simulations, and real experts say, like, we don't really need to do that. Do you know how many tests China has done? 50. We've done thousands, 50. Or at least over 1,050. So when you say that we're going to test, you're now allowing China to test. And so when the president correctly says they're a distant third, what would allow them to catch up faster? Partly testing, because they haven't done as much. And so my view on this is, yes, we give up a little bit in terms of constraining ourselves when we have a test ban treaty and we uphold it. But when we break that, other countries who are our adversaries benefit more than we do.
Well, how does someone like Xi Jinping, who is on his way for his first face-to-face with Trump in 6 years, how does he read a message like that moments before they sit down together?
I know, it's a little bit of a crazy Ivan, taking a Tom Clancy phrase. I don't really know what that came from or why it would be now. I think it might be that someone told him that China was testing, or I don't know exactly, but that's not really the case. So I'm not really sure what this point is that other people are doing it, so we should be doing. I'm not really getting that. I might be missing something though. Okay, because it's a new thing and I haven't.
The other thing, though, that I thought about was the North Korea aspect of all of this that has kind of been part of this meeting. I was listening to the president speaking with reporters last night on Air Force One, and he was saying, you know, they'd been making some overtures about having the two of them sit down together. We have not yet seen North Korea respond to that, I don't think, but they were firing missiles off of their west coast the other day. Do you think that has anything to do with this calculation, or how is that something that they go into this meeting with that in the background of this?
That's interesting, Caitlin. Very smart of you. Look, we've been waiting for North Korea to do a nuclear test, for about 2 years now, and they haven't done one. That would be necessary, we think, for them to miniaturize their warheads enough that they could really be sure that an ICBM, which they have, that could reach anywhere in the United States, that it would have a warhead that would explode as expected. And so we've been waiting for them to do that. So this could be about North Korea. Now, those missile tests are short-range ballistic missiles, and maybe that it could be a North Korea angle. As far as I know, there isn't going to be a meeting with Kim. The president has floated that, and maybe he's frustrated that they haven't responded. I don't know. We'll probably find out a little bit more about what this is all about in the next day or so. But it's interesting, and I don't know. I mean, I think that what President Xi would think about this is he's very unpredictable, and I'm having trouble having a stable relationship with President Trump. And I think that is not a virtue at this point in our negotiations with them.
Ryan Reynolds here for Mint Mobile. It turns out one of the fastest growing segments of people signing up for Mint are people.
I want to ask you about one other thing, because it kind of came up, I'm just going to say randomly. Just before this meeting, the president basically said that he wanted to revive the idea of nuclear testing. Mm-hmm. He put this on Truth Social, and he said he ordered the military to, quote, start testing nuclear weapons on an equal basis, and he wants to that process to start immediately. And just for history here, folks, the U.S. has not detonated a nuclear bomb in more than 3 decades. And the president, of course, is saying that should change.
It had to do with others. They seem to all be nuclear testing. We have more nuclear weapons than anybody. We don't do testing. We've halted it many years ago. But with others doing testing, I think it's appropriate that we do also.
Who is he saying is doing testing?
That's the great mystery. So China has not tested since the 90s. Russia has not tested since the 90s. He may be confusing this with the delivery vehicle tests, exotic weapons that Putin was showing off even earlier this week, but there was no nuclear detonation involved in that. The only country that has tested has been North Korea, and their last test was about 6 years ago. So I'm not quite sure where this rash of nuclear testing that he's discussing is coming from. Now, there has been pressure from many in the nuclear community to say that you can't go 3 decades without doing tests, and that it's not.
And we
enough
should
to
say
do
one of the reasons
model.
why they stopped is because they were using mathematical models, and they were able to say, look, that we think there's another way to do this.
And because we've got nations around the world to sign but not ratify, unfortunately, the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty, which was supposed to stop testing around the world.
Mm-hmm. Is this a sign the U.S., which had never signed on to nuclear proliferation, is just further disinterested in being a leader on the idea of like de-escalating nuclear ambition?
But Gotti, I should mention that the president posting on social media quite a significant social media post saying that the United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. He goes on to say that Russia is second, China is a distant third, but will be even within 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed, he says, the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis, and that process will begin immediately. So there you go. The President of the United States saying that he's instructed his administration to begin testing nuclear weapons. We're out to White House officials to find out exactly what that means, whether he means testing the delivery systems for those nuclear weapons or the nukes themselves. The United States has not tested nuclear weapons since 1992. But again, that breaking news a short time before this meeting with President Xi, President Trump saying that he wants his administration to once again begin testing nuclear weapons.
Mr. President, why did you change your nuclear plans? Why are you going to be doing more nuclear testing?
Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And
And Gabe, I'm sure you're listening to that. It picks up exactly where we left off, that first question to President Trump about the nuclear testing change for the United States, and that came in the hour before this bilateral meeting. Gabe, I know that question went unanswered by the president. He said thank you, and it looks like that bilateral meeting is now beginning without the cameras in there. But again, you've got him making a major announcement when it comes to the United States and nuclear testing, as well as the United States potentially allowing South Korea to build a nuclear submarine. How do you think that that is going to play into the dynamics of the talks that we see today?
Well, Gotti, a couple things. First of all, as part of our live coverage, actually before the camera cut to President Xi right there, President Trump had made some very brief opening remarks welcoming President Xi to this meeting, saying it was a great honor. I repeated calling him a good friend as well. But you're right, Gotti, very significant developments that the president did not answer a question from reporters right there. Also, I want to point out this meeting with President Xi, very different from the one several weeks ago with Russian President Vladimir Putin, the pomp and circumstance that we saw there at that Alaska summit. This is very bare bones, so to speak, at the Busan airport, which is not far from where I am and where the APEC summit is underway. But as you said, some significant developments when it comes to potential nuclear testing. Again, we don't have the details of that, but you're right. In the last few hours, President Trump announcing that he is allowing South Korea to build a nuclear submarine, at least parts of it, in the shipyards in Philadelphia, also announcing what he calls a trade deal with South Korea that involves some $350 billion in investment in the United States.
We thank you for watching.
There you have it, you guys. So that all unfolding, and now let me go ahead and get you caught up on what the articles are saying. Let me see if I get my camera into focus here. I'm all blurred out. Okay, there we go. Now let's go ahead and take a look at what's been coming out here so that way you can see it for yourself as we're getting a response from Russia. And also do me a favor as well. For some reason, a lot of people saying they didn't get the notification. YouTube didn't send it out. So if you could do me a favor and hit the like button, and also maybe share this out, because apparently YouTube didn't give the notification, people are saying. So not a lot of people on today. So if you can support the channel by sharing and hitting the like button, that would be awesome. All right, let's take a look at the news though, so that way you can see what's taking place this morning. Russia on guard after Trump's call to resume nuclear weapons testing. This updated 45 minutes ago from the time of me starting this. Trump said that he had instructed the Department of War to resume nuclear testing after a more than 30-year pause. The Kremlin denied that it has tested any nuclear weapons amid a moratorium on nuclear weapons testing. Russia would act accordingly if the U.S. went ahead with the plans, the Kremlin has said. President Donald Trump's call for the U.S. to resume nuclear testing after a more than 30-year pause has caught Russia's attention, with the Kremlin warning on Thursday that it would act accordingly if a Cold War-era moratorium on nuclear weapons testing was broken. So they're saying that they are preparing to match the United States with this ahead of a high-profile talk with China's President Xi Jinping in Asia on Thursday. Trump said that he had instructed the Pentagon, rebranded as the Department of War, to resume nuclear testing. Greg Asby Sr., thank you so much for the $50 super chat. Appreciate that generosity a ton. Thank you so much. Reading on, it says the United States has more nuclear weapons than any other country. Russia is second and China is a distant third. But we will be even within 5 years. Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. That process will begin immediately, Trump said on a Truth Social post on his platform. Earlier on Thursday, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov was asked by reporters for his reaction to Trump's comments on resuming nuclear tests. So here it is, you guys. This is what we heard back from the Kremlin. Trump mentioned in his statement that other countries were allegedly testing nuclear weapons. Until now, we were not aware that anyone was testing anything, Peskov told journalists in comments translated by NBC News. And if the Berezovsky test is somehow being referred to, it is in no way a nuclear test, he added. All countries are developing their defense systems, but this is not a nuclear test, Peskov said. He added that the U.S. has the right to make sovereign decisions, but reiterated Russian President Vladimir Putin's position that if someone abandons the moratorium, Russia will act accordingly. He did not provide further details on how Russia would act. No arms race? Asked if this was the start of a new arms race with the West, Peskov replied, no. But tensions over nuclear weapons have simmered for decades despite various attempts to get rival powers to cease the development, testing, and modernizing of existing or new nuclear arsenals. Now, in 1963, the Partial Test Ban Treaty, signed initially by the US, UK, and Russia, banned nuclear tests in all environments except underground. The treaty was a precursor to the current Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which has been ratified by 178 states. The U.S. officially stopped testing nuclear weapons in 1992. China and Russia aren't known to have conducted any tests since the 1990s either. In 2023, however, Russia rescinded its ratification of the treaty, saying that it did not approve the U.S.'s attitude towards global security. However, Russia did not clarify on whether or not it would resume its nuclear testing. The suspicion and threat around countries modernizing existing nuclear weapons and developing new ones has remained a live risk as geopolitical tensions mount between nuclear powers and countries who have not signed up to the Non-Proliferation Treaty and are developing nuclear weapons, like India and Pakistan. Trump's announcement comes after Russia flexed its military muscle last week by testing its much-vaunted Burevestnik long-range cruise missile, which is capable of carrying conventional or nuclear warheads. Russia boasted that the missile is invincible, has an unlimited range, and can evade air and missile defense systems. Trump was less impressed by the tests, saying that Russia should focus instead on ending the war in Ukraine. And the Trump-Xi talks. It's likely there was some wariness in Moscow on Thursday, with the country having watched its longtime geopolitical ally Xi Jinping hold cordial talks with Trump, with the leaders praising an apparently fruitful meeting in South Korea. Now, the meeting came after Trump had appeared to turn against Moscow in recent weeks, canceling talks with Putin amid frustration with Russia's unwillingness to consider a ceasefire with Ukraine. Meanwhile, the White House leader hailed amazing talks with agreement on many issues. Trump said, and I believe that's supposed to be talks with Xi, Trump said that he reached a one-year agreement with China on rare earth supplies, and he also cut fentanyl-linked tariffs on Beijing by half, taking overall duties on Chinese goods down to 47%. China had also agreed that they will begin the process of purchasing American energy. Trump stated later in a Truth Social post, adding, in fact, a very large-scale transaction may take place concerning the purchase of oil and gas from the great state of Alaska. Xi, meanwhile, said Beijing and Washington should be partners and friends as he met Trump. The seemingly warm meeting and tangible results of the Trump-Xi talks will not be music to Moscow's ears, given its close relationship with China, which it prizes as one of the few powerful geopolitical and trade partners that it has left after its 2022 invasion in Ukraine. Now, when it came to more than 3.5-year conflict in Ukraine, Trump said the issue did not come up, and that the U.S. and China were going to work together to stop people being killed. He also signaled his fatigue with the war, however, stating the two sides are locked in fighting, and sometimes you've got to let them fight, I guess. Crazy. Russia did not comment on the talks on Thursday, although CNBC has asked the Kremlin for a response on the meeting. So there you have it, you guys. We're hearing that is the response of Russia, and also a warning coming out from Dmitry Peskov. Take a look here. Russia says that it didn't test nuclear weapons, but they will do so if the United States did. Dmitry Peskov, a Kremlin spokesperson, told Russian news agencies that the recent drone and missile tests were not nuclear weapons tests, and they also said that about the Burevestnik as well. Let me know your thoughts. Is testing a nuclear-capable missile considered nuclear testing? I think that is what Donald Trump is getting at, is that they have these more advanced powerful, they're calling it invincible missiles that they are testing. And Trump is saying, well, if you're going to test your nuclear-capable missiles, we're going to do our nuclear testing as well. And Russia's coming out and saying, we're not testing nuclear weapons. These are just missiles that would carry the nuclear warheads. Let me know your thoughts. Do you consider these tests a threat? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. But let's take a look at what Peskov had to say regarding this. Now, this article coming out today, you can see October 30th, 2025, just a little while ago, says in response to President Trump's threat to resume nuclear testing, the Kremlin said Thursday today that Russia had not tested nuclear weapons recently, but would if the United States did. On Wednesday, President Vladimir Putin of Russia said that the country had successfully tested a nuclear-powered drone days after he announced the trial of a nuclear-capable missile. The test did not involve a detonation, but the claims might have prompted Mr. Trump's orders. Because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis, he wrote on social media. Dmitry Peskov, a Kremlin spokesperson, told Russian news agencies that he hoped Mr. Trump had been properly briefed on Russia's most recent tests of nuclear-capable weapons because they certainly cannot be viewed as nuclear testing at all. Now, Russia has not conducted a confirmed nuclear weapons test since the 1990s, but Russia would respond in kind if another country broke the global moratorium on nuclear testing, he added. It was not clear what Mr. Trump meant by testing. The United States routinely tests unarmed missiles. So there you have it. That was Dmitry Peskov's response to all of this. And also, Trump's test threat could fuel nuclear tensions with China as well. Beijing, who he met with right before that announcement, they have been expanding their arsenal as well. And distrust between China and the United States over nuclear weapons, it has deepened with little hope of any form of agreement. Let's take a look at this article coming out today when President Donald Trump called for nuclear testing shortly before talks with the Chinese leader Xi Jinping. He may have inadvertently added a new complication to one of the most difficult issues between their countries, their nuclear weapons rivalry. Mr. Trump declared on Thursday today that because of other countries' testing programs, I have instructed the Department of War to start testing our nuclear weapons on an equal basis. His order may have been prompted by a claim by President Vladimir Putin a few days earlier that Russia had successfully test-flown a nuclear-powered and nuclear-capable cruise missile, even though the test did not involve a detonation. Moves towards renewed explosive tests of nuclear warheads would further endanger the treaty that for decades has constrained all but a handful of countries from carrying them out. If the United States follows through with resuming nuclear testing, it would effectively give, I think, China and Russia a carte blanche to resume full-yield nuclear testing, which is something that neither country has done in a number of years, said Ankit Panda, the author of The New Nuclear Age. The nuclear non-proliferation regime is under tremendous stress at the moment. Russia, China, and the United States can't even agree on basic principles of what really makes the non-proliferation regime tick, said Mr. Panda, the senior fellow at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. Now, Mr. Trump and his administration may clarify his comments in the coming hours or days. Mr. Panda and other experts said Mr. Trump may have meant that he wants to test launch nuclear-capable missiles, not detonate nuclear devices underground. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Did he mean nuclear-capable missiles, or did he actually mean nukes? Let me know your thoughts. Put nukes if you think it's nukes. Put missiles if you think he's talking about missiles. Now, when asked later about his remarks on nuclear weapons testings, Mr. Trump suggested that they were not related to China. It had to do with others, he said, without naming any countries. They seem to all be nuclear testing. But Mr. Trump's combative words alone could reinforce wariness in Beijing about U.S. nuclear tensions. Nuclear weapons are one area where distrust between China and the United States has deepened with little prospect for quick agreement. Now, under Mr. Xi, China has been rapidly building up its nuclear arsenal after decades of maintaining a comparatively modest force. China has also 600 nuclear warheads, most of them designed for land-based missiles, according to a survey published earlier this year by experts at the Federation of American Scientists. That is still far fewer than the thousands of nuclear warheads that the United States and Russia have. But the speed of China's buildup, as well as Moscow's growing threat, has prompted calls in Washington for faster modernization of U.S. nuclear forces to deter two big adversaries. Russia has nearly completed its modernization of all of their nuclear forces, and China is modernizing, and they are growing their arsenal at a breathtaking speed, said Eldridge Colby, the Undersecretary of Defense in the Trump administration. He told senators during his confirmation hearing earlier this year. China's next development plan, released in summary this week, calls for the strengthened strategic deterrence capabilities, a term that includes nuclear force, a military priority for the next 5 years. And last month, China displayed its growing collection of nuclear-capable missiles, including one that can be launched from submarines and bomber planes, at a military parade in Beijing. Mr. Xi used the parade to emphasize China's maturing nuclear triad, that is, the ability to threaten enemies with nuclear attacks from land, sea, and air, said Lin Po Chu, a researcher at the Institute of National Defense and Security Research, a government-funded group in Taipei, Taiwan. Now, the pace of China's nuclear expansion will continue and won't change just because of Trump's announcement on increasing nuclear weapons testing, Mr. Lin said. Satellite evidence suggests that China may be making facilities ready to conduct nuclear tests underground, possibly to signal that it could respond in kind if other countries resume testing. China conducted its first nuclear test in 1964, and it lasted till 1996, just before the Comprehensive Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, a global moratorium on testing, was adopted by most countries. China, like the United States, signed, but has not ratified the treaty. Now, China carried out about 45 tests in total, fewer than the many hundreds conducted by the United States or Russia. As a result, China's nuclear weapons scientists probably have had to work with less data than other superpowers to design their warheads. Since 1996, China and other atomic powers have checked and tested warheads by using subcritical tests that stop short of atomic blasts. But satellite imagery has revealed renewed construction at Lopnur, China's nuclear test site in Xinjiang, a far western region of the country. The activity includes new tunnels that could be used for underground nuclear tests, which may help in the design of new nuclear weapons, two experts have said. Now, if Mr. Trump actually orders new nuclear tests, it would take the United States about 18 months to prepare the likely test site in Nevada, said Mr. Panda, the expert at the Carnegie Endowment for International Peace. China and Russia, he said, could probably move a little bit faster. So there you have it in regards to the potential testing that could go on compared to China and Russia. Now, also how the U.S. nuclear weapons compare to China and Russia, as Trump has ordered this test. We're hearing that Russia and the United States literally have thousands, and as you saw, China has about 600. So again, let me know your thoughts. Do you find this concerning right now? And also, it just seems like everybody is talking about these nuclear weapons after these testings, as a U.S. ally is preparing to host nuclear-powered submarines as well. Take a look. Australia took a significant step in hosting allied nuclear-powered submarines amid China's growing naval threat. As the United States vessel arrived for maintenance, the Chinese Foreign Ministry did not immediately respond to a request for comments. Now, here's why it matters. Under a trilateral security partnership known as AUKUS, Australia is set to operate and maintain conventionally armed nuclear-powered submarines with assistance from the United States and the UK, including a planned purchase of 3 American submarines. Now, as a part of the AUKUS, Australia will also support the rotational presence of the submarine's Rotational Force West as HMAS Stirling Naval Base in Western Australia, formed by up to 1 UK and 4 US nuclear-powered submarines as early as the year 2027. The buildup of Australia's capabilities to host and operate nuclear-powered submarines came as China, which possesses the world's largest navy by number of vessels, expands its military presence across the Pacific, including a circumnavigating of Australia. So here's what to know. USS Vermont, the USS Navy Virginia-class nuclear-powered attack submarine capable of firing Tomahawk cruise missiles and torpedoes, arrived at HMAS Stirling on Wednesday for maintenance, Australia's Defense Department said in a press release. Australia has the responsibility of coordinating, supporting, and delivering what the press release called a significant package of maintenance work, officially known as the submarine maintenance period on the visiting American submarine. So there you have it. We've got some images as well of them arriving in Australia. So a lot going on right now with nuclear conflict, the United States, Russia, China, Australia getting in the middle of this, and we still have the war raging with Russia and Ukraine. And there's been a lot of conflict in the Middle East. We're currently under that ceasefire agreement, but it is very fragile, and we're going to be seeing where we go from here. But right now, we are hearing that Russia is saying, United States, if you're going to test nuclear weapons, we're going to test nuclear weapons. Now, a lot of people are saying that it actually is nuclear-capable missile testing, not nuclear testing. But we will see. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. What's going to be unfolding here? Are we going to have nuclear testing? If so, put nukes. Or are these just nuclear-capable missiles? If missiles, just put missiles in the comments. Let me know your thoughts. But a lot of people saying that since the 1990s, we have not seen nuclear testing taking place from any of these nations. However, unless there's something going on behind the scenes that they're not telling us about. Let me know your thoughts. A lot of people speculating that that 8.8 earthquake off the Kamchatka Peninsula in Russia, which actually moved the entire island, which is a site for those Russian bases. They said they believe that some people speculate that there was a nuclear test that went wrong under the surface and that caused that 8.8 magnitude earthquake. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Do you think that they are doing testing underground and nobody knows about it? Maybe Donald Trump knows and he's just outright saying, we know you're doing it, we're going to do it too. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Are they secretly testing? If you think so, put yes. If you think no, put no. But regardless of what comes out, I'll be sure to let you know here on the channel. Keep an eye out for any videos. It appears that the notifications are not activating. Not sure why. I'll let YouTube know. Do me a favor, hit that like button, subscribe to stay up to date, and also articles are going to be linked down in the description below. But thank you guys so much for joining me, and I'll catch you in the next one. Take care. God bless. This is Steve.